You're tuned into the Dab Podcast, presented by the Wide World of Rome, and hosted by Andrew Romanella and Anthony Rinaldi. You can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. All that we ask is when you're done, please rate, review, and share this podcast with a friend, as well as reach out to us on social media at Dab Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Enjoy the show.
Mic check. Oh, look at that. The Metsies take the lead. Oh my gosh, Andrew, are you nervous yet?
Let's go.
Are you palm sweaty?
Meet the Mets. Greet the Mets. Hello, hello, hello. And welcome in to the 77th edition of the Dab Podcast. I am your host, Andrew Romanella, and with me, ready to celebrate the Metsies playing good baseball, is my partner, Mr. Anthony Rinaldi.
Andrew, if I don't get my original microphone, I am retiring from this podcast.
Really? Hard strike line, huh? We're going to lose you.
I'm like Antonio Brown, brother. Did you believe that Metcalf needs a helmet? Was that really a complaint he's having right now in the preseason?
Could you imagine, though, if you really did quit doing the podcast because I wasn't providing you the same mic that you've used every single day? Couldn't adapt to change?
And I need the microphone.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, we have a fantastic show lined up for you here today on the Dab Podcast. We're about to run through some wide receivers, some running backs that you should draft in fantasy football. We're also going to knock down the NFC North and the NFC South, our predictions for this week. Listen, we got some catching up to do. We were unable to do a show last week, so we're going to double you up this week. Plus, obviously, the New York Metropolitans are playing fantastic baseball, so we're going to obviously dissect that. We got some fans that wrote in some good stuff, and Anthony's still really bad at Whataya Got. So people, Anthony, put your seatbelt on because it's going to be a good ride.
Andrew, you got to be stoked watching your Mets play baseball. The ride they're on makes it a little more intriguing. But let's be real, Andrew. Football season is like 20-some days away. You probably got your fantasy drafts in like a week or two. I know I got like 4 lined up, ready to go, Andrew. I'm fired up. It's football season.
It is. And I want to start, I think, dissecting the NFC South and the NFC North because we can't come on here and just give the people their 5 fantasy running backs and 5 fantasy wide receivers. I want to give them what we feel is going to happen on the actual football field first before we give them the fantasy football field.
I agree with that. I can't listen. The folks want the fantasy, but in reality, it's NFL. The majority of us all want to. I want to hear you break down the NFC South. Well, I'm intrigued with who you think the Bears, the Vikings, the Packs, or the Lions. Who's going to come out on top on that division?
That would be the NFC North, and 100%. I think, and you could disagree with me here, Ant, but I think outside from the AFC East, in my opinion, this is going to be the easiest division to pick. And here's why. I think the Bears are going to win it, and I think it's going to fall right behind the Bears in the Packers, the Vikings, then the Lions. And why I think it's super easy is because I think the writing's on the wall. We know the Lions stink. They're going to be the seller of the division. I don't think there's anything or anyone that's going to disagree with that. Besides Matthew Stafford and a few pieces here and there, there's not much there for the Lions. I get Patricia's going into his second year. They're probably going to have a little bit of a better defense. I get all of those things. But when Aaron Rodgers is in your division and the Bears are as good as the Bears should be, you're going to be at the basement. The Vikings, I just don't trust Kirk Cousins. I don't care what team he's on. I don't care what offense he's playing. I don't care how many years he's been there. I don't trust him. Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. So maybe I'm playing bias here, Anthony, and how good he's been in his career. But I just believe they both finished essentially in the same spot last year. I think the Vikings were 8-7-1. The Packers were 7-9. To me, that's the exact same thing. I think the Packers finished second, and then barring Mitch Trubisky going backwards, I don't see how the Bears, with Jordan Howard, their offensive line, the defense that they have, hello, Khalil Mack still exists. We forget about him. I don't know why, but we always seem to forget about him. He is the second best defensive player in the league. I got the Bears winning it, and honestly, Ant, I feel like it's going to be 11-5, 12-4 for the Bears.
It's a lot, even a lot right on Mr. Mitchell Trubisky there, Andrew. I can't disagree with most of what you said. I believe the Vikings are a little better than you're giving credit for. I know Kirk Cousins got paid all that guaranteed money. I really had nothing to show for it last year. Team made the playoffs. Really was one play away. With Case Keenum years prior, and they go ahead and sign Kirk Cousins, and they kind of have a letdown year. But I still kind of like those weapons they have. Thielen, Diggs. Kyle Rudolph is a solid tight end to have that running game. You got to think Dalvin Cook, hopefully, hasn't proven to stay healthy, but another year healthy. I like the Vikings. I do not like the Bears as much as you do. I think those Vikings. I think 10-6, 9-7. I think that may be a winner in that division. I don't see the Bears going 11-5 or 12-4, something like that. I think there's a little too many wins for Mitchell Trubisky, Andrew.
Really? Well, and I understand your point, and I get the point on the Vikings' weapons. And I think overall, out of all the teams in the division, the Vikings might actually have the best offensive weapons. I guess I just don't see how the Bears would go from being 12-4 last year. I get it's hard to duplicate, but I can't see them going from 12-4 to 9-7. I know you play a harder schedule and things like that happen, and I understand that. But if it didn't work last year with the Vikings, I know they get Dalvin Cook back hopefully for the full year. I just start to believe that there's something with Kirk Cousins that is always going to have his team finish 500. And until he proves me otherwise, right, I don't know if I can trust it. And maybe I am putting too much stock in the Bears. Maybe I'm putting too much stock in Mitchell Trubisky. But my gut is telling me for some reason I'd rather ride that train, and I trust that train over trusting the train that the Vikings are pulling into the station.
I trust Kirk Cousins over Mitchell Trubisky for sure, so I'll give a nod to the Vikings there.
Really? Listen, so you have the Vikings finishing first in this division?
I will go with the Vikings finishing first in this division, Andrew, just because I feel like the Bears were kind of a sneaky 12-4 last year, if you could be sneaky. Whereas this division's a lot tougher. I feel like Green Bay's going to have a nice bounce back, so they're going to be that'll be a tougher out for Chicago. Even the Lions, I know they're kind of I literally wrote down in my notes, just a tough division. Like they'll be an 8-8, 7-9 team, but they'll just get smacked around by by the Bears, by the Packers, and by the Vikings, just because those teams are a little bit better, and their quarterback play is just that much better. Stafford is good. Don't get me wrong; the guy's worth every penny he makes out there. And we'll talk money along with quarterbacks, because there's an intrigue in Dallas brewing right now with the amount of money that man's going to make.
It's true.
And the content, is he worth that much money? And it's shocking kind of to hear everyone go back and forth with Dak Prescott, but not to get off base. But, I don't think the Bears, 10-6, like I said, 10-6, 11-5, that'll win the division. But my nod goes to Kirk Cousins. How do you like that, Andrew?
Before we hit the NFC South, okay, it's twofold here. I want to know what you think the Packers are going to be, because I think there's a real curiosity there. And then I'll get that answer first, and then I want to give you the first 5 games that the Bears play, because their bye week is week 6, and I think we'll learn a lot about which way they're going to swing based on those first 5 weeks worth of games.
I like myself some Green Bay. Not going to lie. Hopefully it's a bounce back year. They struggled last year. Obviously McCarthy losing his job. That was old news. New coach, LaFleur. I think he wants to run the ball a little more, which is always interesting because you got a guy like A-Rod back there. But, the weapons, Devonta Adams, little teaser alert, going to be one of my top 5 wide receivers, Andrew. That's a no-brainer. Geronimo Allison, I don't know what he's going to be. They got a dude with 3 names. I forgot his 3 names. But
sleeper pick, though, Geronimo Allison, I think.
Yeah, and also that other dude, something Scanlon. He's got like 3 names. he's a pretty he kind of had a bounce back. Yeah, I mean, kind of a surprise year last year. That running game, free Aaron Jones, Andrew. I mean, that dude. I believe he had something in the lines of if he had 10 plus touches a game, he was averaging 5+5 yards a carry.
It's insane.
Which that'll lead you to a top 5 running back.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you feed that man the rock,
good things happen.
Hopefully, if LaFleur does want to run the ball, you'll see him explode. And obviously, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. So, again, I think they're going to be sneaky good in that division. And they'll definitely challenge the Vikings and Bears definitely for a top spot.
Well, we're going to see. And I knew coming in that you were going to disagree with me. And I love it because I don't know why. You're right. And it's kind of funny, but I don't know why I'm on the Trubisky train so much. And here's their first 5 games, right? They started out the gate on the first Thursday game of the year against Green Bay. And that's home versus Green Bay.
Soldier Field, all right.
Then at Denver, which we don't really know what we're going to get from Denver. Then prime time at home against the Washington Redskins Monday Night Football.
Oh, that's an easy W.
Then, they're away. They're at Washington.
Oh, still a W.
Still a dub, right? Then
that defense travels.
100%. The defense always travels, right?
Khalil Mack's going to welcome Dwayne Haskins to the NFL.
Yeah, hey, bud. Congratulations, you're here. Then they're home versus the Vikings, and then they're home versus the Oakland Raiders. So Green Bay, Denver, Washington, Minnesota, Oakland, 3 of the 5 at home.
Well, listen, you may not be wrong. They could be 4-1.
Right.
That'd be a strategy. I think more along the lines of 3-2. I'll give them the 3 wins against Denver, the Raiders, and one of those home games against either Vikings or Packers. Probably the Pack. I thought I'd give the Packers just because I'm not. Like I said, I like the Green Bay to bounce back, but I'm not sure they're going to be anything special out the gate. It's going to take them a few minutes to click with that new offense that they're trying to run.
It's a good point, and I'll give them 4-1. I think Denver, Washington, Minnesota, and Oakland should be.
That was a Washington game, yeah.
Right, should be wins, and then one of those 2, Minnesota or Green Bay, might be a loss. But the reason why, listen. Are you surprised if week 6 the Bears are 5-0? No, because they play Minnesota at home and they play Green Bay at home. So it's interesting to see. But the back end of their schedule: New Orleans, Los Angeles Chargers, Philadelphia Eagles, 3 straight after the bye week, and then they also have to play the Rams, the Giants, the Cowboys, and the Kansas City Chiefs on their schedule. So we'll see what happens with that Bears team, but. Because the way the NFL works, and for those of you that don't know, and some might not, the NFL essentially makes your schedule harder, I guess, is the best way to put it, right? From year to year, based on how you do the year prior. And there is some validity to that, and you saw it with the Jets a few years ago, right? The Jets finished like 10-6. Everyone thought they were going to have this great year. You looked at it, and they had one of the hardest schedules in the NFL, and only ended up winning like 4 or 5 games. It happens, and I think, Ant, that's probably why it's so hard in general in the NFL to have 2 dynamite years in a row.
Yeah, any team not named New England.
Right. Facts. All right, so now we're in the NFC South, and kind of based off what I just said to you about having 2 dynamite years in a row is the reason why I think the NFC South is going to be such a fun division to watch this year. You have the Saints, you have the Panthers, you have the Falcons, you have the Bucks. I'm going to let you lead this one off, Mr. Rinaldi, and give us your opinions.
Let's start right away with the cream of the crop. That'll be Atlanta. Matt Ryan, that offense is something special. Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu, Tyler Gabriel, Calvin Ridley. I mean, all these guys out there, these dudes can just ball, fly out ball, running backs galore. Defense is still suspect, Andrew, I'm not going to lie. That was something that kind of was their bugaboo, their Achilles heel last year. It's probably still going to be a little bit on the down, but that division's tough. New Orleans, always going to be tough with Sean Payton and Drew Brees, freshly paid Mike Thomas. He's going to ball out. Alvin Kamara, he's a beast. So, New Orleans has weapons to go around. Not sure what you're going to get out of Tampa Bay. I'm not going to lie. That's still a new coach, Bruce Arians. He's going to try to fix that offense. What is Jameis Winston? That's kind of been a concept and a question on this podcast a lot. over the past few months when we discuss the Tampa Bay Buccaneers like that, Andrew. You know what I mean? So you're not sure what we're going to get. I mean, Mike Evans is a beast. They got some defensive players down there, but like I said, they were kind of a dumpster fire. And Carolina, could it be a bounce back year? Cam Newton, is he healthy? I believe he has to basically learn how to throw the football again, kind of, because he's got a new motion, a little bit different than his usual. But I mean, Christian McCaffrey's a stud. They have DJ Moore. I believe he's going to be a standout, maybe a sleeper wide receiver pick. Hashtag teaser alert, Andrew, for our wide receiver discussion.
Love it.
So I'm going to go Atlanta, New Orleans. They'll battle it out. And Carolina, Tampa Bay, kind of be middling 500, maybe a little better, maybe a little worse. But that's my take on it. NFC South.
Well, I agree with you in every area, but I think it's hands down guaranteed that New Orleans is going to win this division. Excuse me. I just don't see how the other three teams can really even compete. Like, I get the weapons in Devontae Freeman and Julio Jones and Matt Ryan throwing the football. I Taylor Gabriel. I get all those weapons in Atlanta. Don't trust the defense. Cam Newton, you made the point. What is Cam Newton going to be this year? Christian McCaffrey's great. Greg Olson's great. They have the ability to have a very good defense. They could win the freaking conference. They have that much talent. But what are they? We don't know. And I just throw the Bucs away. I agree. I think the word you used was dumpster fire, and I think you couldn't be more spot on. And I also
last year, yeah,
right.
But listen, under Bruce Arians now,
right. And I agree with you, but I think it doesn't change until they get rid of Jameis Winston. And I'm not saying that because I think Jameis Winston isn't a serviceable to good NFL quarterback. I'm just telling you that I don't think you win with Jameis Winston. There are certain guys, as you've learned probably in this podcast alone, that I just don't feel like you're going to win with. Jameis Winston would be one of them. So if I had to put it in order, I'm taking the Saints. And I'm going to shocker you here, though. I'm going to take the Panthers finishing second in this division, then the Falcons, then the Bucs. Now, when we talk about the Panthers over the Falcons, I'm talking like 9-7, 8-8, 9-7, 9-7. But the Panthers went 2-0 against the Falcons in the regular season. Something along those lines. I think they'll both be 500 or better. But I just do have that feeling that with McCaffrey, Cam needing to adjust his slots a little bit, you're going to see a lot of Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh pre-holdout.
Listen, Andrew, to one of those basketball Zion Williamson dunk, pitching ahead, picking Atlanta to come in third in that division. Wow, that's you got some couillons, my man.
Listen, listen. Hey, listen. I need to see more. And Cam's an MVP. I know Matt Ryan is too, but Cam's an MVP, and that's going to come back out eventually, especially with the guys he has around him.
Yeah, man, listen, that's a tough injury. He seems to be, the preseason, he's going to get some reps. So you're going to see him out there, but I don't know. It's an interesting injury. It's the arm. It's a shoulder. It's tough for a quarterback. He never had a good motion, and until he learns how to slide or get out of bounds, Andrew, I feel like he's always going to have some of those lingering arm issues or body issues because he takes that beating.
All right, we're going to move on now to the fantasy side of things, and what Ant and I will do on Twitter and Instagram at Dab Podcast on both of them. We will tweet out and Instagram story out what our NFC South and NFC North predictions were. Clearly not agreeing on both. So I'm curious, and I'll throw it up there. I'd love for the people to interact on the social media. Let us know if we're stupid. Let us know if we're smart, which one of us you agree. Slide into them DMs and give us your opinion because we would like to know. In terms of fantasy now, Mr. Rinaldi, I want to start with running backs because I think that there is 97% of people that play fantasy football looking to draft one player and one player only, number one in the draft. So we are going to have different lists, okay? So what I'd like to do is I'd like you to give me your 5, then I'm going to give you my 5, and then I want to go from there. How's that sound?
That sounds kick you in the crotch. Fantastic, sir.
Start us off, kid.
All right, I think it's simple, folks. Typically, there's not always a clear number one, but he's number 1 in my heart, number 26 in your playbooks, and that's Saquads from the New York Football Giants. And then I got number two through 5, and honestly, I think these guys are interchangeable. Frankly, all 5 of them are interchangeable. I'm not going to make Saquon that much of a GOAT just yet, but because he's probably going to face 8-9 man boxes every single game because the Giants are going to be that brutal on offense. But I mean, McCaffrey, Kamara, and Elliott, depending on and Zeke's a question mark. He's kind of the asterisk. You know what I'm saying? Because I hate to not put him in that list, but if he doesn't sign or if he holds out, God forbid, which I don't think he'll do, I think he's going to sign the richest contract in the NFL. It's just a matter of when he signs it, which will probably be like September 1. So hold your breath. But I'm going to put Zeke at 4, and my number 5, and I think he may have a huge year. He better because he's well rested, and that's Lev Bell.
Oh, wow.
So that's my 1 through 5. It's Saquads, McCaffrey, Kamara, Elliott, and Lev Bell.
Lev Bell, do you feel like he's going to give you more value as a runner or a pass catcher this season?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say, obviously he has a million touches in Pittsburgh, and he was that safety blanket for Ben. He's the check down. I believe Sam Darnold will keep him in his periphery, and whenever the shit hits the fan, he's just going to drop it off to Lev Bell and let him run for 15, 20 yards, take it to the house, do what he does. So I'm going to say he's going to do a lot of his – I mean, I would think he'd do a lot of his damage pass catching on the Jets because that O-line, although is better, is kind of a question mark for the Jets. A new center, freshly off retirement, Ryan Khalil. So they made some moves. They got some pieces, but it's not a great O-line. They're probably middle of the pack when it comes to offensive line ranking. So and then Lev Bell likes to kind of wait and juke, behind the pocket, and then kind of shoot through a hole. And I don't know if the Jets are going to create those holes for him, like Pittsburgh did, because Pittsburgh was an all-world offensive line, Andrew. So I think that may be a shock to Lev Bell's system because he hasn't played since last January, 2018, folks. Let's remember that one. So I mean, it's kind of an interesting pick. He's a little bit of a flyer, but the dude just if he's right and if he's the Pittsburgh Lev Bell, he's gonna be a stud.
Before I give you my top 5 fantasy running backs, I believe are going to happen in 2019. Do you believe, for anyone listening to this podcast that is thinking about drafting one of these 5 guys, and I'm sure you're stupid if you don't think about doing that, but do you believe all 5 guys that you just listed should be first-round picks, or do you feel like you can get a guy like Lev Bell or maybe even this year Ezekiel Elliott in the second round?
Yes, depending on how late your draft is, I believe that. I don't know what I believe, Andrew. I can't say that. I mean, these guys are all studs. It's hard to believe if you have picks 1 through 4 that you're not taking. I believe a running back, depending on your league. Obviously, if it's a PPR and quarterback heavy, I can see Pat Mahomes jumping into the top of this list as well. I know we discussed that on episode 76, our fantasy quarterbacks. So, folks, go back, take a listen. I believe he was our overall number 1 choice for quarterbacks. So,
Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, ladies and gentlemen.
There you go. Good call. So, I mean, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say all these guys are going to be first-round picks. Lev Bell may not be if it's a 10 team, just because probably get some wide receivers in that mix. So, yeah, to answer your question, Andrew, yes, one of them will go outside the first round.
All right, and I think I agree with you. I think Lev Bell will go outside the top round 100%. But I also think Ezekiel Elliott will as well. And I have Ezekiel Elliott as my number 5 running back because I actually do believe Zeke is going to get a contract before Dak Prescott. But I believe because this contract situation is happening, people are going to steer clear of him, especially people that may have drafted Le'Veon Bell last year and got burned in that situation having drafted him so early. So I think in a lot of leagues, Zeke is going to fall to the second or the third round. But it ain't going to go past there because I think the general consensus is he's going to get the contract done before Dak. So he's my number 5. I'm going backwards here for you, okay? Number 4, I'm going with David Johnson. Arizona Cardinals are not going to be a great football team, but what they are going to be is an explosive football team on the offensive side. And the way Cliff Kingsbury wants to play offense, he wants to spread you out, he wants to move fast, and he wants to let Kyler play. All we've talked about with some of these running backs is how they're great safety blankets for their QBs. That is what David Johnson is, on top of being, possibly when healthy for 16 games, which is the question mark, one of the best running backs in the league. And we've seen it in the past, one of the top 5 fantasy running backs in the league. Number 3, I have Alvin Kamara. At the end of the day, when you're on the New Orleans Saints, you're going to be a fantasy option. Hands down, bottom line, I don't care who you are. You could be the 4th wide receiver. You're going to be a fantasy option. Kamara does it both. He's one of the, if not the most explosive back in the league. Number 2, and hold your anger, is Saquon Barkley. And I will explain in a second. You said it, though. The Giants' offensive line is not going to be good. Their offense might not have enough explosive pieces. Their offensive line is going to be better, but it might not be good enough without having those pieces so that people can go 8, 9 men in the box. And we saw it last year because they did it to Saquon. He really was their only option, besides Odell, of course. But I don't know if from a fantasy standpoint he's going to be the number 1 running back, because I do not know if I trust what that offense is going to do. That's why I'm going to put Christian McCaffrey number 1, because I think the offensive line down there might be slightly better, but more so than anything else, because Cam Newton has the ability to get outside the pocket and move. I get that he's getting older, and you are correct. He has to change his arm slot. So I don't know if he can still throw from the half, the 3/4, and the over-the-top arm slot. But I know he can get outside the pocket, which is going to give McCaffrey a few more opportunities to gain those balls in open space, which we know with fantasy backs is going to be key. And the last thing, I think, for both these guys, why McCaffrey and Saquon are 1 and 2 for me, is because at the end of the day, I don't think both of their teams are going to win more than 9 games at its best. Which means, and you know where I'm going with this, in half of their games, they might be playing from behind, which means more yard, reception, pass catching, prevent defense type yards.
Now I know you can cuss, Andrew, with your synopsis on fantasy running backs. I mean, you're right. Saquon's definitely going to face a lot of tough fronts. But last year, I believe the Redskins did it on him. I believe put 8-man box, and against that, I think he ran for 146 yards, like 2 times. He's still beast mode. Obviously, it's going to be tough for him to repeat what he did, but he's so damn humble, and you just want to root for the kid. Plus, he plays for my New York Football Giants, so I know it'll make the Romanello family happy if he does well. So,
and really, listen, ladies and gentlemen that may and hopefully do use some of our fantasy advice here. I know we're splitting hairs in terms of the top 2 guys, but you're going to want to look to get one of those 6 or 7 guys that we just listed in McCaffrey, Barkley, Kamara, Johnson, Elliott, Le'Veon Bell, even a Dalvin Cook Anthony mentioned before with the Minnesota Vikings maybe in the 3rd or 4th round. Don't forget about Todd Gurley. Coming off an injury, you don't really know what his workload's going to be like, but if he's still sitting there in the 3rd or 4th, 5th round, Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon, if his holdout ends, maybe if it's late in the game, because some people think that might last longer, maybe in one of the later rounds. So there are a lot of running back options, but in mine and Anthony's opinion, these are the top 5 or 6 guys in the first 2 or 3 rounds you need to make sure you have on your roster.
Yeah, and I can't agree more. I love the David Johnson pick. He was my number 6, kind of 5B pick. I believe he's having a huge year with Kyler Murray. And that Arizona offense, like you said, it's going to be explosive. And they're definitely going to be playing from behind a lot. So we can see a lot of David Johnson out of the backfield there. So I'm definitely intrigued. I'm going to try to get a lot of DJ in my league. So just another name to keep for sure.
All right, let's go to wide receivers now before we finish the football conversation on episode 77 of the DAP podcast. We just talked about splitting hairs with running backs, right? I feel like with the top 3 wide receivers in the league, you end up doing the same thing. But for me, Anthony, drafting the wide receiver position in fantasy football seems to be so much more difficult than the running back position. I don't know why that is, but I don't know if you have the same feelings on it, or if maybe, and my feelings come from quarterback play, truthfully, but at the end of the day, for some reason, I have more difficulty drafting this position than any other offensive position.
And that's a great observation. I think it's just because it's so deep. and you probably feel, I won't say overconfident, but you probably I feel like you, knowing who you are, you put more, like you said, you put more of your eggs in the quarterback and running back, baskets, because, you're stressing those other positions. So you think, all right, listen, I could grab any wide receiver. The wide receivers are so deep. Wide receivers 1 through 40 are going to be pretty decent. So let me make sure I get my quarterback and running backs first. And then you almost forget about drafting the top end wide receiver, and then you're left with guys, like a Calvin Ridley or a Devin Funches, and you're like, what the hell did I just draft?
100%. I've had them both on my roster in the last 3 years.
So I tend to agree with you. The top 5, similar to running backs, I feel like 1 through 5 on my list could be any which way you want to slice it.
Give them to us right now. Just get into it. I love it.
All right. I'll start like you did. Started from the bottom. Now we here. Number 5 is the man who just got paid from New Orleans, and that's Michael Thomas. And that's probably a little. I'm probably lowballing Michael Thomas because that dude's he's a beast. He's a stud. Ironically, though, he's never amassed double-digit touchdowns in his career yet, which is something that I think he could easily do in 2019, Andrew.
Sure.
I know last year he had about 1,400 yards and 9 TDs with Drew Brees. He kind of came out of man on fire, kind of slowed up a little bit when the team started realizing, we better double team Michael Thomas or we're going to be in trouble. But he's my number 5. My number 4 just became a number 1 out there in Pittsburgh, and that's Juju Smith-Schuster. And, he was a beast last year with AB. I think he'll be a beast without AB. And it's unfortunate, rest in peace to the wide receiver coach out there in Pittsburgh. Unfortunate. I know he just happened to lose his life there. Lifetime Pittsburgh coach. The fans loved him. The players loved him. So obviously they're going to be playing with a heavy heart this year. But I got Juju number 4. Struggled in the red zone, but I believe Big Ben, he's going to need that reliable receiver there, especially with AB and Les Bell gone. And number 3 for me, and you're probably not going to like him because he's on the Atlanta Falcons. That's Julio Jones. And he easily could be number 1 or number 2 on this list. But I got him number 3, just for the mere fact that number 1 and number 2 are such beasts. But it's tough. He amassed 1,700 yards last year. I know he joked around in that commercial, and he said, let's go for 3,000, which is kind of absurd. I would have said, let's go for 2,000 first. Maybe let's try to get that accomplishment there, Julio. But anyway, he's my number 3 guy. Number 2, I got my man from catching balls from A-Rod, and that's Devonta Adams. And people forget, he didn't play Week 17 last year, and I think he only scored like half a dozen points less than DeAndre Hopkins for total amount of fantasy points at the wide receiver position. And he didn't play, like I said, the last game of the season because Green Bay was out of it, and he was kind of nicked up. So he just said he kind of took the rest of the year off. So I got him coming in number 2.
And he was second in the league in touchdown receptions as well.
Exactly. And I believe he's hauled in 35 touchdowns over the past 3 seasons, which really only trails Antonio Brown for the most in the league. So the dude is A-Rod's number 1 target. And last time I checked, A-Rod is pretty good at quarterback. So you got to have Devonta Adams up there. And number 1 is that predator-looking mother effer out of Houston, and that's DeAndre Hopkins. He's just a straight beast. He finally has a quarterback now in Deshaun Watson. He caught a career-high 70% of the targets that were thrown his way, which is just an absurd amount of number. And I don't see him stopping. Houston's going to start getting more of their weapons back. Hopefully a healthy Will Fuller. They have Kiki QT in the mix as well. The running backs, Lamar Miller, they just traded for Duke Johnson. So that offense is going to be prolific. You don't know what to show Watson, if he's going to run it, if he's going to pass it. So I believe DeAndre Hopkins is going to have – obviously, I don't think he's going to repeat last year, 1,600 yards, 11 touchdowns. That's pretty tasty for a wideout. But, he'll be a stud, and he's my number 1, Andrew.
I like it, Ant. All right, but I disagree with it. I like it because I love you. I disagree with it because I disagree with it. I'm going to just give it off real quick. Juju Smith-Schuster, number 5. Tyreek Hill, number 4. Michael Thomas, number 3. Julio Jones, number 2. DeAndre Hopkins, number 1. I have Devonta Adams as the 6th best wide receiver going into 2019. That's not because I fully disagree with where you put him. it's for some reason, again, my lack of trust in what the Green Bay Packers are doing this year. I just don't know what that offense is going to be. I get that A-Rod's throwing him the football, but heck, how healthy is he going to stay? We've seen him get hurt more times than not in the last 5 years. Devontae Adams is the best wide receiver and option to throw to on that team. But then again, that also means a lot of double teams and a lot of ability because you're the number one guy to be taken out of the offense. And at the end of the day, I agree DeAndre Hopkins is number one. Julio Jones is a dude and is the only wide receiver in 2018 that averaged over 100 yards per game. And for me, I look at how many yards a game they get and how many touchdowns they score. And last year, it was a down year in the amount of touchdowns Julio Jones got, which means what to me, Anthony? The offensive coordinator spent the entire summer thinking about how he can get Julio Jones the football more in the red zone. The dude's always going to have over 100 receptions. He's averaging over 100 yards a game receiving wise. And I think he's going to have a breakout year in terms of touchdowns. So that's why I put him so high on the list. And the dude, just Tyreek Hill, like, I'm not happy about what went down with him, but at the end of the day, if he's going to play, he had 12 TDs last year, almost 1,500 yards, and averaged 93 yards per game. I don't see why him and Patty Mahomes won't do the same.
I really hope somebody breaks his leg in the first game of the season.
Wow.
I don't know the guy. I don't know the man. I'm just going off what I read in the articles. Very disappointed in him, and maybe to the detriment of my fantasy, but I'm not going to mention his name ever on this podcast or have any draft stock in him at all this year. And call me crazy, call me a knucklehead, but it is what it is. It's just my own little stupid stance on what it is. But he's definitely a stud. You can't stop him on the field. Dude's quick as lightning. And like I said, Patty Mahomes is going to find him, and they're going to do everything they can to win football games. And if he's there, he's there. But I don't care for him, that's for sure.
I'm going to give you three names that I wrote down outside of my top six because I put Devontae Adams literally right underneath Juju as essentially a 5B wide receiver. But I wrote down these three names, and note how I'm not writing Odell Beckham Jr. or I'm not writing Antonio Brown. I talk about lack of trust in what's going to happen in a given season with those two dudes, and I got no idea. But these three names I wrote down as sleepers. Maybe not sleepers, but guys I think you should definitely draft. Jarvis Landry, Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen. To me, those three guys have to find their way on your roster, probably between the rounds of 3 and 6 or 7 is where I see those three guys going.
I tend to agree with you on that, and I'm kind of interested to see where you have this fella. And I know you were kind of interested in his QB play, but how about Mike Evans down there in Tampa Bay?
I like him.
He's a beast, and I think with a coach that actually will control Jameis at least to a degree, and you got to believe Jameis wants to play for a contract this year, so he'll hopefully be on his best behavior, try to put his best foot forward. And, I mean, I think Mike Evans might have a huge year this year.
Well, he had a huge year last year. Not many people realize he was third in the league in receiving yards at over 1,500 at 8 TDs and averaged 17 and a half yards per reception, which is kind of unheard of if you think about it, Anthony. And to me, you're right. I like Mike Evans. I agree with you in terms of having Bruce Arians down there. Yes, another guy you have to have on your roster. I just don't know if I'm comfortable putting him in my top 5 needed fantasy wide receivers. Again, and maybe it's me beating a dead horse at this point, but again, it kind of comes back to the quarterback play.
I got 4 names for you I can rattle up real quick who I think some potential. They cracked the top 12 wide receivers.
Give it to us because the fans wrote in about baseball and I know they want to hear about it.
Chris Godwin out of Tampa Bay. Love this dude. I know we're like, oh, Anthony's in love with Bruce Arians, the quarterback whisperer. Jameis Winston's gonna have a huge year.
That's true.
But Chris Godwin, I mean, he's gonna slide into that kind of that Larry Fitzgerald slot role that Larry played in Arizona when Bruce was there, and we know what kind of target haul he had. I believe he had over 135 targets per season in that slot role. So listen, he's going to get the looks. I believe he may have a good year. Calvin Ridley out of Atlanta. I know you're down on Atlanta, hey, Andrew, because you're a knucklehead. But Matt Ryan's going to sling the ball around. And Calvin Ridley had a pretty solid rookie year. So I expect him to make a jump this year and grab some of those targets away from Sanu and Hooper. Yeah, right? But they have Austin Hooper, I believe, the tight end now.
Yep.
Tyler Lockett out of Seattle. Obviously, what's his name has retired finally. Doug Baldwin. And, Russell Wilson needs that target, and it's going to be Tyler Lockett. And I said it earlier, and that's out of Carolina, DJ Moore. I just like his attributes. I like his size. I like his skill. And this dude, he tallied over 960 yards from scrimmage last year, and he didn't start playing over 50% of the snaps until after week 8.
Wow.
So imagine this dude on a full rep 16-game schedule. And plus, I don't know if you saw a little side note. I don't know if you saw that little skit with Steve Smith when he was talking to Cam Newton.
I did not.
And who he should draft. Maybe I'll have you post on the social media. It's worth 2 minutes. He literally goes to Cam Newton. Should I bench DJ Moore and sit him for somebody else? And he's literally sitting right next to him, DJ Moore. And DJ Moore's just kind of chuckling. And Steve Smith dead ass looks at him and goes, "If you get me 2 points, I'm going to stop the shit out of you."
That's great.
It was fun. It was hilarious. It's definitely worth it. So, DJ Moore's going to hustle this year because Steve Smith's going to slap him if he doesn't.
Well, there you go. And remember, guys, the list of wide receivers that Anthony just listed off that weren't in his top 5, probably looking to get those players in the mid to high rounds. Your 4 through, more, you're probably going to get closer to your 8 or your 9th round. But Calvin Ridley, guys of that caliber, you're probably going to look to see them go off the board. And again, it always varies so much, but if you're in an 8, or especially if you're in a 10 or a 12 team league, you're going to want to look to get those guys probably in the 5th or 6th round.
I mean, listen, anybody could tell you to draft Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, Juju, those guys. But, I mean, it's these guys that you're going to find, like you said, in the 8th, 9th, 10th round. Some of these sleeper picks, your wide receiver 3s and 4s, that could win you a league because they're just happen to be studs. And typically you find them on the waiver wire week 3 or 4, but you'll have them at the gate because you listen to the Dad podcast.
We had some fans write into the podcast, and we love when the fans write into the podcast. And before we get into that, I'm going to let everybody know that we are, to the best of our ability, going to get on the Dab Podcast on Twitter and the Gram and tweet out both our top 5 wide receiver running back lists, as well as some of those sleeper picks that Anthony and I believe you guys should go after in the later first part of your draft. We will be knocking down some more positions and another division or 2 on episode 78. So that would be next week, of course, for all of you counting at home. So make sure you tune into that one as well to keep getting yourself ready for your fantasy football draft. We remind you that our fan hotline is sponsored by Dig Me Nation. You can head over to digmenation.com. You can use the promo code DIGTHEDAB, that's DAAB, at your purchase, and you'll receive 30% off your next purchase. That's digmenation.com, promo code DIGTHEDAB. All right, we got 2 fan write-ins today, Ant, and I thought it was pretty perfect because they were in the baseball variety, and I know before we finish the show with Whataya Got, we want to dive into some baseball, so I figured let's get the pelotas out and let's play some baseball. And, of course, start with our favorite fan, which is Mr. John Gutty Guttington. Mr. Gutt wrote in, specifically on the Gram, over under 2.5 National League East teams make the playoffs.
Wow, he said over, under?
Over, under, 2.5. National League East teams make the playoffs.
I am taking the under.
Yeah? Can you put a specific number on it?
What?
Can you put a specific number on it?
Yeah, I'll go 2.
Okay, so you think of the Braves and the Nationals.
Yeah, I want to say your Metsies are in there, but I don't like the way they're
Oh.
playing. I don't want to put the jinx on. I don't want to touch the money. Obviously, they would be the 3rd team that would sneak in there, but they had to jump over a team in the NL East in Philadelphia. And the Cubbies in Milwaukee are fighting it out, or duking it out So there's some teams to be on the lookout for.
I am going to. Oh God, I want to say over so badly, but the Mets are in the process of losing a series to the Braves, and if you're not going to be able to beat the Braves, and yeah, I know they beat the Nationals 2 out of 3. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. And do I trust the Nationals? No, but if the line is set at 2.5, I almost want to start saying to myself that it's only going to be 1. I mean, I know the Nationals are leading the top wild card spot, but Milwaukee's only a game and a half out of that second wild card spot. The Cubs are 1 game behind the Nationals, and it's just so ever fluctuating. I think, honestly, wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being the Cubs and the Brewers. So I'm going to go under, and I'm going to say 1 NL East team.
Wow, Andrew with the hot seat. Somebody check that man. He is so concussed.
It hurts me. It hurts me because I'm so proud. I'm so proud of what the Metropolitans have done to this point, Ant. Like, I'm super stoked. They played great baseball. I think they won 15 out of 16. They won 8 straight. And then they even took the series against the Nationals, which is what you're looking for. But then you can't come in against the Braves and play poor baseball. Listen, I don't think you're going to come in and sweep the Braves. Never once did I think that was the case. But all I'm looking for is you to go into the third game of the series and be able to play a rubber match, not play to not get swept. If you're going to win those games, and I know you're playing worse competition, when you play the Braves, that's your statement game. And you play the Nationals, of course, that's also a statement game, but the Braves are the statement game because they've been dominating this division for the last 2 months.
Yeah, this is kind of your litmus test. The Mets have won 15 out of 17, like you said. They were on a hot streak, playing the best baseball since the All-Star break. You had thought maybe they turned a corner here, and this was the team that they were supposed to be. If they had anything of a resemblance of a bullpen in the first half of the season, perhaps they wouldn't have been so far below 500, and then this run would have been even more magnified. They probably would have been even in the thick of things for the division. And you hoped them playing Atlanta this week, in this series, and maybe taking 2 out of 3, or that would jumpstart you, get you to 5, 4 or 5 games out of first place in the division, and then you can really start dreaming. But when it comes down to it, and the game's played out, Atlanta is just younger, faster, stronger, and they just kind of have it all positions right now. And that's gonna be a tough out. I think they play them like 8 more times too, don't they?
Yeah, and I'm also not a believer in the Phillies. So like I don't think that the Phillies are going to do anything. They're 4-6 in their last 10. I know they're coming off 2 straight, but I don't trust them. And without a bullpen, you can't go deep. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. And you're right. They have an opportunity to play the Braves, but you're also right because that probably means they're going to go, if it plays out the way it should. And I hate saying this because I was so stoked. Even at the beginning of the podcast, I was amped. But realism sets in every once in a while, and especially with the Mets, and you realize, we're staring. If we played the Braves 8 more times, 9 more times, whatever it is, let's call it 9, keep it easy. We're staring at 3-6, and that's not getting us in the playoffs.
Now, do you think the Phillies took a page out of the Mets playbook here by hiring old man Charlie Manuel to be the hitting coach? Try to jumpstart those bats?
I think so. I think it's one of those things where that change might be good. And like with the Mets, when they hired their new pitching coach, he's 82 years old, but he talked a lot about being progressive in his mindset while also being old school in his mindset. Being able to combine the two and be better for your pitching staff. And he was also the pitching coach for all of these dudes in the minor leagues, so that helped. Charlie Manuel for the Phillies might be of the same ilk, and maybe he is being more progressive in his ways. Plus, it's a name that the Philadelphia fans can get excited about. Players, there's history there, all that good stuff. So, yeah, I do think that that's the case, Anthony, and I'm curious to see. I think they dug themselves too much of a hole, even though they're 2 games out of the wild card. Just the teams that are in front of them, I just think it's going to end up being too difficult to pass.
Yeah, exactly how you put it. Just too many teams to jump over. As much as you want to control your own destiny, you got to keep winning. You got to try to keep winning series. Obviously, you got to sweep and really do damage to the bottom feeders like you did when you were 15 and 17. But it's just here comes the thick of it. September baseball. This is where you make your money. And it looks like the Mets might be on the outside looking at.
Second fan write-in today on the Dig Me Fan hotline is Bill from Farmingdale. We appreciate Bill writing us on the Gmail. He must have listened to the last podcast and actually heard my scream and cry for people to email us. Bill from Farmingdale. It's got to be Long Island, right, Ant? Long Island?
Strong Island.
Strong Island. Hey, Billy. That's probably Staten Island. Bill from Farmingdale asked us what our World Series predictions are.
Shout out, Andrew.
What are our World Series predictions?
That's simple for me, Andrew.
The Yankees and someone.
Out of the AL will be my New York Bronx Bombers.
You're brutal.
40, a high watermark for the season. 40 games over 500. We'll put up on the Orioles 17 straight games, Andrew. Isn't that a laugher? They started up. They won the first game of the home opener. I was there with my son. First game ever. Fantastic time. And then they lose 2 in a row to the Baltimore Orioles. And everybody thought the sky was falling.
They did.
And then we've rattled off 17 straight. But hey, I digress. I'm going to go, as cliche as it is, I'm not going to put the Dodgers in there. I feel like the Dodgers can't go to the World Series 3 years in a row, even though they themselves are 40 games over 500. I kind of want to put an outlier team in there, and I want to put these Atlanta Braves. I want to put Yankees Braves, a little old school matchup from the early --
Wow, I like that.
That's my because the Yankees Dodgers is too easy. I mean, listen, if that's how it plays out, that's how it plays out. But I'm gonna go a little outside the box here. I kind of like this Atlanta squad. I'm liking this roster. I like the addition of Dallas Keuchel. I think he's gonna find something here for the Braves. And the bullpen is kind of sneaky good. They added a few pieces at the trade deadline. They were one of the more active teams, and they have it all around. They have a pretty good team, Andrew.
I'm gonna agree with you on the Braves, but I'm going to disagree with you on the Yankees. I don't believe, and I am in the same mindset that probably everybody else in America is at this point in time right now, and it's that the Yankees don't have enough starting pitching to help them do what they need to do in the postseason. I get it. They're built off the bullpen. I get it. It's a different time in baseball. But what it's not is a time to overuse arms. And what happens when you're reliant on your bullpen for 162 games and the postseason is you get Andrew Miller and Aroldis Chapman circa 2016 when the Cubs won the World Series. I think it was 2016. Maybe it was 2017. Either one. That's what you get. Aroldis Chapman that actually blew a 3-run lead, ladies and gentlemen, was throwing under 100 miles per hour with a dead arm, came to the Yankees the next year and was significantly way worse and injured, and an Andrew Miller who's never been the same. And if it wasn't for I think it was a rain delay that brought the Cubbies back into the locker room and the Indians, and then Chris Bryant makes a speech or Jason Hayward makes a speech, they come out, they win the game. If it wasn't for that, it would have been a blown save for the Cubs and 2 terrible relief of performances that got you there. First by Andrew Miller, which gave the Cubs a 6-3 lead, and then by Aroldis Chapman. I think it's too much. I think it's going to be the Houston Astros. I want to say it's the Indians. I really, 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 really do because they're playing so well. But I think it's going to be the Astros. I think it's going to be the Braves.
Yeah,
the Astros are just too good.
How about the Indians, man?
They're good, but is their starting pitching good enough? I don't know.
I don't know, but they were 26 and 26 at the end of May.
And the Twins were like 16 games up on the division.
Didn't I call that as bad as I am? What do you got?
You did.
I'm gonna toot my own horn here.
It's confirmed.
Didn't I say that was the one division race that was gonna flip flop was the Indians and Twins.
Confirmed. You did say that.
But listen, they've gone 43 and 17 since May. That is some good damn baseball, Andrew.
But I am a believer.
The fighting Franconas.
I love it. The fighting Francona is that. If I had to choose a manager right now that I was allowed to pluck from a team and put in my bench or dugout right now, it would be Terry Francona.
How do you not put Tito in there?
I agree. I'm just a little concerned with them peaking at this time because they've peaked for the last 60 something games, right? As you just said. Well, in baseball, how many times have we seen that happen? A team that is literally hot during all the dog days of summer, and then September hits, they play middling 500 baseball, and then they limp into the playoffs, and they get axed way earlier than we thought they were going to. That's what my gut's telling me about this Indians team. I love Trevor Bauer. Zach Plesac, teaser alert to what he got, throwing the ball well. Shane Bieber, throwing the ball really well. Clevenger, correct. Guys that are good. I don't know if they're guys that are better than what the Houston Astros are going to throw out. And I keep telling myself this. If it's the Yankees versus the Astros or it's the Indians versus the Astros, I'm always going to give the upper hand to the Astros in both scenarios. And because I have such concerns with the starters and the staffs on both the Indians and the Yankees over the Astros, I'll take them in the Astros over the other two.
I believe Trevor Bauer got traded, Andrew.
He did.
Cincinnati,
He did.
Cincinnati
And
Reds.
you know what's funny is, as I said that out loud, I saw the little asterisk next to his name, and I'm like, damn it. That's why Adam Putko or whatever his name is, I think his name is that, has been starting.
I believe Corey Kluber, too, is coming back from his wrist injury.
Well, but again, I don't trust that. I don't know what he's going to be.
Right. Listen, I happen to agree with you. You're going to win 60 games in baseball. You're going to lose 60 games in baseball. And then you got to figure out those other 40 games. And you hope if you're a Cleveland fan, you hope that the 60-game hot streak that they're on isn't, the last of their run, and they continue it in the playoffs, the postseason. And you got to like your chances, though, if you have Tito back there at the helm, because the guy just knows what he's doing. He's a winner. He's kind of that last old school. Him and Bruce Bochy are kind of two of the last remaining guys who still have a little gut left. It's not straight analytics. We'll go from there. But I have to agree with you. Houston, that rotation is filthy. That offense is filthy. They can line up with you 1 through 9. Doesn't matter. And I think this is it's big for me as a Yankee fan. I think this is why the Yankees need to, continue to press forward, continue to win games, is because you want the best record in baseball so you can have home field throughout the playoffs.
Of the three teams we're talking about, I completely agree with you. The Yankees need home field advantage the most.
Yeah, that bandbox suits our offense well. And, it'll definitely – I think that was the reason why – what was it? Was it last year, 2 years ago, when we lost to Houston Astros in the ALCS?
Yep.
Was that Game 7, at Houston? The crowd, for some reason, home field advantage means something in baseball. And
it's because it rocks you mentally.
Yeah.
Like in hockey, you got a helmet on, you're skating around. You might not even see the stands outside the boards. In football, you got a helmet on, you're getting smoked by other dudes trying to literally take your head off. You're probably not going to see the crowd. In the NBA, it probably operates much like baseball does, where home court advantage. Now, we saw it, in this playoffs, it almost didn't matter, but because the fans are on top of you, it can matter a little bit more, and I feel like that's the same thing in baseball. It's such a mental game, that loudness, the field shaking underneath your feet because the crowd is so loud, stuff like that can really have an impact on a guy.
Yeah, and listen, for my sake, and for John Gutty Gunnin's sake, who's got season tickets, you better hope the playoffs go through the Bronx so he can take me there.
That's 100% facts. Well, we appreciate Gutty Guddington. We appreciate Bill from Farmingdale. We always appreciate the Dig Me hotline, and we always remind you that you can go to digmenation.com, use the promo code DIG, the DAB, that's DAAB, and you can receive 30% off your next purchase. And, of course, Anchor.fm. If you don't want to write them in, you don't want to do dabpodcast@gmail.com, you don't want to go to the website, you don't want to slide in the DMs or the Twitter DMs, that's cool. You can go to Anchor.fm, follow the Dab Podcast. You can record a 1-minute voicemail and get your voice heard on the Dab Podcast. I heard a birdie say that somebody was gearing up for maybe one on episode 78, so we hope that's going to be a good one.
Let's do it, folks. Listen, the fan interaction is what drives the show. And we love our fans, and we need multiple interactions.
Real quick, Mr. Rinaldi, before we sign off on episode 77 of the Dab Podcast, give me a quick what do you got prediction. I'm going to remind the people that 2 weeks ago, I chose Marcus Stroman versus the Cleveland Indians. It was going to be Marcus Stroman against the Pittsburgh Pirates. It was going to be his first start as a Met. He was terrible. 4 1/3, 7 hits, 3 earned, 3 Ks. The Mets did win, but I didn't feel like it was right to give myself those points. So I'm 54-53 after an 0-2 episode 76. And Ant Rinaldi, no different than what he has done, I think the last 7 weeks in a row, it feels like. He had chosen Christian Yelich and the Brewers against the Chicago Cubbies. He went 0-2. Yelich was 0-4 with 2 Ks. That dropped him to 45-62. Mr. Rinaldi, you can start it off because you're not very good. So what do you got?
I suck. I'm a legit jinx. So I regrettably will not pick my Bronx Bombers because I don't want to jinx them and the run that they're having right now. So I will pick the New York Mets there, Andrew.
Ooh.
And I will take my my chutzpah and I will put my money on the New York Metropolitans because frankly, they need to listen. They got to get as many W's as they can, and they got a lot of fight in them. Never say die type of attitude, and they're playing a division rivalry. And I like yourself, I'm going with Marcus Stroman.
Oh, I like it.
The Long Island kid needs to prove himself to Met Nation. He was a big trade acquisition of your boy Brody Van Wagenen, and he's facing off against Met Killer. Well, not really.
No,
Recently,
he is.
he still is. All right, I remember.
He's like Chipper Jones. He could have 5 bad games, and he's still, though, going to bounce back at some point and just freaking dominate again.
I want to say he had like some stupid like .088 ERA against the Mets or something like that.
Going into like the midpoint of last year.
Yeah, exactly. So it's Stroman versus Teheran. It should have been the rubber match. It doesn't look like it's going to be that. Looks like the Mets just may try to avoid the sweep. So hopefully, my man Stroman, he's going to give me 6 2/3 strong, 8 Ks, 2 walks, 2 earned runs, and the Mets walk out of Atlanta with a victory there.
Oh, wow. All right. I love it. I love that you're picking the Metropolitans in your What Do You Got. This is the first and only time I will be rooting for you in your What Do You Got pick.
There you go, Andrew. Now, give the folks what they really want to hear, and that's What Do You Got?
They probably do think I'm concussed. I didn't pick Saquon Barkley first in my fantasy running backs. I think I pissed you off some other time when I said like the Panthers were going to be good or something like that. And now I'm going to
better than Atlanta, yeah.
And now I'm going to pick the Yankees for my What Do You Got?
Go ask yourself, Andrew.
You said you didn't want the jinx, and I was like, you know what? I feel like being a jinx this week. So I'm going to take the Yankees versus the Cleveland Indians. I'm going to take the Saturday jump off. And we talked about it before the show when we were getting ready. It's not like there's great pitching matchups this weekend. I know it's Tanaka, Paxton, then CeCe for the Yankees. But I just mentioned his name before. Zach Plesac. He's got a 3.37 ERA. I think he got 12 wins for the Indians right now. He's been pitching really, really well for that team. And as we noted before, losing a good arm to the trade deadline, so people have to step up. Plesac could be one of them, but that's not who I'm choosing. I'm choosing James Paxton because I need to see him be a guy that steps up like Zach Plesac. He's got to look across the side and say, what he's doing for the Indians, I need to be doing for the Yankees. And if I do, we give ourselves a better chance of being in the World Series. I'm going to say, and you know what's funny is, and I over the last hour of the show, I changed because I had originally said to you before the show I was going to go DJ LeMahieu. But I have such a good lead on you. I really, really want to pick for what I kind of want to see happen, and that's James Paxton actually pitch the way he should and prove to us that he can't do it just against the Orioles. I'm going to give him 5 2/3, and I know that doesn't sound great at first, but I'm going to say he only gives up 1 earned run, strikes out 5, gives up 5 hits. The Yankees win a ball game 7-3.
Attaboy, Andrew. Give him the goods. And listen, I can't argue against that pick for my Yankees. I can almost guarantee James Paxton will give up 1 run in the first inning. That's for sure.
And that's what I'm thinking. He'll give up one in the first inning, throw about 25 pitches, and then he'll go 5 innings or 4 2/3 after that of just dynamite baseball.
But listen, this is definitely a team that you're going to see in the playoffs potentially in Cleveland. So you're going to want to bring your A game. And if you're James Paxton, you want to prove that since they traded for you, you really are you should be the number 2 guy. Although with the way Domingo Germán's pitching, if there is going to be an innings limit, I don't know. I hope not. I hope they realize they can just throw it around the effing window because he's been our best pitcher. And we have Tanaka. If Tanaka, Germán, and Paxton, if those 3 can be right, that's a solid 3 guys to go into a playoff rotation with.
And I was going to cop-out answer and say DJ LeMahieu. And I told you, I really wanted to choose an offensive player. But as I thought about it, and really what clicked to me about choosing James Paxton was seeing that I have a 9-game lead on you in the loss column. I'm like, let's get frisky a little bit here with these what do you got picks.
There you go. Now you're talking.
We talked a lot on
Lay it on the line.
Yeah, I'm laying it on the line. And we talked a lot on episode 77, but I think we dropped some knowledge on the people. And all that I ask, Mr. Rinaldi, is that when they're done with this podcast, done listening, they rate, review, and share it with a friend.
Tell your friends. Give us the 5 stars. Rate us. Subscribe to us so you don't got to hear Andrew tell you where to find it every friggin' week because it'll pop up on your screen for you as soon as Andrew uploads it.
That's facts.
So everyone, by the way, my what do you got pick is tonight, folks. So if you're not paying attention, that's the Thursday night jump off.
Ooh, get it going.
I just realized what day we're in.
Yes, sir.
And frankly, that means I need to go to bed because some of us have work in the morning.
Facts. That's also facts.
Damn good cast, Andrew. Glad to be back. Can't wait to break it down. Are we going to break down what? Tight ends next week?
You want to do tight ends and maybe
we could probably do tight ends, kickers, and defense. We could probably knock it all 3 if you wanted to.
Let's go.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Let's go tight ends and kickers for the people, and we'll leave defense for its own time slot.
I am taking David Bonagora, kicker.
Oh, wait.
He's not in the NFL anymore.
Damn it. Arena League?
Oh, no. Man's going to be a police officer now.
Hey, friend of the cast, Mr. Bonagora.
I'm going to say PBA cards all around.
I was going to say, yeah, does he want my address or should I just, is he going to give it to me in person? All right, well, we'll talk about that off air.
Okay. We digress, folks.
We appreciate you, the listener. Remember, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, dadpodcast, dadpodcast.com. Shoot us an email, dadpodcast@gmail.com. Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Andrew Romanella. That's my partner, Anthony Rinaldi. We are signing off. We love you. Peace.